What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and this is the first time I've actually, it looks like a three-way? It's weird. But anyway, I digress. I have the honor and privilege of having UFC veteran, IFS champion, BAMMA champion, CXF champion, Terrion Ware, and comediocre himself, comedian, actor, owner of Fight Science, co-host of the Critically Thinking podcast, Ian Harris. What's going on, you guys?
Same old.
Just trying to stay sane during these trying times, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess our condolences to Herman Cain, who unfortunately passed away.
Yeah. Don't start none, won't be none. That's all I'm saying. These hoaxes are a motherfucker. That's all I gotta say. I mean, I hate to laugh at anybody's death. I'm not laughing at his death, but it's like,
no,
you have all the same information as the rest of us, and you ignore it, and you double down on your stupidity and your ignorance, and I can't feel sorry for you. Let's say that. I don't wish it on anybody, but I don't feel sorry for, I feel sorry for all the other people who have had to die because of that same ignorance and stupidity that you've spread to people. Those people, the people who aren't smart enough to know the difference, those people I feel very bad for. The people who should know better, sorry, you should know better. He should know better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, too bad.
The condolences really to John Lewis, who is absolutely, who is a pillar in every community and really did, with his position, try to do better from the very onset. And he's lying in state as we speak. So yes, our condolences to the Lewis family. But to I guess a lighter note, obviously we know that you guys were coach and fighter, mentor, student type deal. How did you guys end up linking? Like, take us back to the beginning. How did you guys first meet?
Well, I had the gym PKG I was there for a long time. Prior to that, I had my own thing, Fight Science, that I just taught out of another gym. Moved my team to PKG. We were there for about 4 or 5 years, and then PKG moved, had some changes, and I had the opportunity to go down to Systems and come in as a partner with the guy who owned it at the time, Dennis, because Tito, who was down there, had left, and we had already known each other because one of my guys had fought Terrion in the amateurs, and a couple of my guys had fought Isaac and a few other guys that were down there. And then a couple of my guys, Cameron and Rob Fernandez, used to go down and train there all the time and mix it up. So it just worked out. It was like went down there, and I basically brought 95% of the fight team from PKG down there, and we kind of merged fight teams. And and then just Systems took off until, for a while. And then eventually Marcus Koval came in and took over as, sole owner of everything. Dennis left, and I stayed on for a long time until I opened up my gym. But yeah, that's where it started. It started with us merging teams when I left PKG.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Terrion, I mean, you had just fought one of the PKG guys on the amateur circuit. Was there any trepidation? Because, I mean, in other forms of business and whatever, you don't usually go over and start, mingling with the rival team, whatever, and that's what makes this like combat sports community so awesome and bright, because like you can do that, So was there any trepidations initially on your end, or was it just like, hey, this is a new opportunity and let's go from there?
No, I mean, not at all. I mean, anyone who knows me, a lot of, I'm cool with everybody, that I fight, immediately after the fight, me and James, we were talking, my wife ended up meeting his mom that was there at the fights as well too. And we were talking, we instantly became friends. We had a classic fight, that led to other opportunities for both of us, because a lot of people had saw us fight, in that fight. And even before Ian and those guys came down, I started training with James. Like, he came down to, at the time it was AMMS, before it was Systems, when we fought each other. And we became friends even before they came down there. So them coming down there, I had seen a lot of those guys fight. I had seen a lot of Ian's fighters fight as well too. So I was excited to have all those guys come down there, because at the time, like, it was just myself and Isaac, and I think Dima at the time, who kind of headed our fight team. So to go from 4 guys in the training room to having about 15, 20 guys that were really high caliber, it really boosted my skills and boosted my career. So I was super happy.
It's funny too, because the guy he's talking about is James Acosta, and their fight, I think to this day, so Kenny at Black House, Kenny Johnson, he used to run his own amateur show called, what was it, Memento, something like that. And he would talk about that fight every time I saw him for like 2 years. He'd be like, dude, those guys put on when are they going to come fight on my show? Because he was on a different shows like TFA or something like that, I think. And people used to talk about that fight. Like we gave James Acosta a nickname after that fight, called him the Terminator, because just the way he got so, Terrion was kind of beating him for a round, and then he like put his hands down, like went the other way and just started throwing punches. And we were like, where the hell did this come from? And that was a crazy fight. I mean, it was like a split decision, I think. It was, or at least it was 2-8. It was a crazy fight. And everybody who saw that fight talked about that fight. It's like, boy, these are amateurs? These guys should be, like we could watch these guys fight all day long. It was hilarious. It was pretty funny.
No, and I love that, because a lot of people that they watch the UFC or Bellator, or even like a CXF now, Lights Out, and not know some of the history, and especially here in SoCal, like the U of MMAs and stuff like that. And speaking of U of MMA, former U of MMA champion Voodoo Maximus says, 3 of my favorite people in MMA. Top of the afternoon, gentlemen. Top of the afternoon to you, champ. Yeah. No, and it's crazy. You mentioned like Dima, who is a Celtic Gladiator champion. You talk about Iron Man Isaac Velasco, and these are 2 members of not just the fight community, but your guys' fight camp that were essentially the glue that kind of helped forge what the team ended up becoming.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of people. I mean, people coming to the gym at that point and hearing about us, and I mean, and the thing is, you have to realize, it's like, LA in general, California is the hotbed of mixed martial arts. I mean, it's a hotbed of jiu-jitsu. There's more like world-class jiu-jitsu trainers in California than I think there are in Brazil these days. It's insane. Like every world champion freaking lives here. And kickboxers and boxers and all this stuff, they all live here in LA. And so when you look at, like, speaking of U of MMA, look at U of MMA champion fought at the same time as some of the guys that were amateurs with us. AJ and these other guys just fought John Jones. Dominic
Reyes.
Dominic Reyes. That guy was a U of MMA champion at the same time as we had 2 or 3 U of MMA champions at our gym. And that dude just fought John Jones. Like, that's how good. I mean, that wasn't that long ago. That was a couple years ago. And It's like 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's it. And this dude is fighting, for the title in the UFC. And it's like, that's how good everybody in LA and in California is. But that's also how good I think our team was, especially at that time. I mean, those guys could step right into from amateurs into the big show and do well. I mean, we keep saying it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, any fond memories of those early shows, especially you, Terrion, obviously James Acosta, that's another name that, again, the populace at large don't know, but again, was integral in the proliferation of what ended up becoming your career and the fight team overall. So, I mean, your memories of kind of like first stepping in, like, did you know, I mean, you were an athlete before, played multitude of sports and what have you during your younger days, and then coming to this like cage fighting. I mean, that's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, for most people outside looking in, but for me, like the first thing I ever did competitive was karate. So combat sports was like one of the first things I've ever done. And then growing up, I did a little bit of boxing as well too. But the first time I stepped into a gym, like for MMA purposes, was literally the day after my 24th birthday. I was fat, out of shape, coming off of a football injury, and I joined the gym to honestly just I wanted to lose weight, and do it in a manner where it wasn't just going to be lifting weights and running and stuff like that. I want to do something fun. Um, so I joined the gym to lose weight, and thinking that okay, maybe after a year, I'll maybe try an amateur fight or something like that and see how it goes. But no real intentions on fighting. I had my first class, loved it. The coach there, after about 4 months, was like, "Hey, like you're coming 6 days a week. You're training like 5 hours a day." Because at the time I didn't have a job, so I'm just like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna train and just get in shape and do something." But then after about 4 months, he's like, "Hey, like, do you want to take this fight?" And I was like, "No, I don't." I'm like, "I've only been training for 4 months." I'm like, he's like, "Nah, I think you're ready. Like, you've been training more than the other guys that are here. Just go in there and do it." And went there and did it, and it just became an addiction, an obsession. I just couldn't stop. And then from there on, I was just fighting like literally like every 5 or 6 weeks. I think I had like 12, 12 amateur fights in like 15 months, 16 months.
Wow, that's nutty. And I mean, you're grinning ear to ear, Ian. Did you know there was something there? I mean, obviously you weren't at the gym and you guys hadn't connected, but like the first time, whether it be that fight with James or prior, did you know that there was something kind of special going on there?
I always joke around, and Terry knows I'm not. He knows I'm just fucking with him, but he also knows that I'm serious because he knows how I am. One thing I never do, and I always tell it like it is, even when I shouldn't. I do it. I'm always like, I tell people stuff like after a fight, like they'll be like, "So this, and I'm like, yeah, but you kind of fucked up here," and they're like, "What the fuck?" Like I can't hide. It's just me. It's how I am. I'm always honest. But I've told him this before. Like when I came to Systems, he was 1-1 as a pro. And he would train in the gym, and he was naturally talented, but skill level wasn't that high. And I remember going, yeah, this guy's not very good. This guy don't have it, right? In the gym. And then the first time I cornered him, I'm like, wait a second, this isn't the same dude that's in the gym. And I always talk about Terrion. I always talk about mental game, and I always talk about different things that are not just physical, And there are people who are amazing in the gym that fall apart in the fight. There are people who are okay everywhere. There are people who you don't see it in the gym and they kill it in the fight. And there are people who kill it in the gym and kill it in the fight. There's all these different levels. But a lot of times you don't know what you're working with until you actually see a fight where you're in the corner and you're making suggestions and they're working with it, or you're seeing them under pressure and then come out of it. And a lot of times you can't tell from the gym. And in fact, I say it's almost the other way around. Usually the people who are okay in the gym, you see skills and whatever, but you see they don't give up, but you think, well, they're not that technical. A lot of times they are beasts in the fight. And a lot of times the guys killing it in the gym are okay in the fight because something else is going on in their brain. And he had this like, Terrion he's got great vision where he sees stuff coming, but he's also very, very calm and very relaxed and very determined to win. And that is the things that you can't teach. So at that point I was like, oh, well, I know I can teach the rest of the shit, and not like he didn't have no skills. He had skill, but it was like, ground game or whatever. I was like, okay, this guy needs a lot of fucking no wrestling. Jiu-jitsu wasn't very good, but he also picks it up like that because he's an athlete, right? And he's intelligent. Like those two things are usually you go, I can get an intelligent or I can get an athlete, but I don't usually get two, So that I feel like that was the thing that really to me stood out in the first couple fights. Is like, okay, we have something to work with here. As opposed to like so many times where I thought, oh, this guy's going to be the next UFC champion. And then the first couple fights, they completely fall apart. And you go, all right, well, hopefully the guy gets his head together. Otherwise, this guy's going to be a 500 fighter. You just don't really know until you get in there.
No, there's something to be said with that kind of trial by fire, and you see what you get. You know, you could either come out of it, you know, with or I guess the pressure situation. You could either come out of it with like a diamond in the rough, or you could just come out with the same piece of coal that you went in with. And you just never know, you know. So yeah. Kerry Carlos Leon of CNC Management says, "How's it going, guys?" That's you guys. Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to CNC Management.
And I think Terrion will probably tell you too. I mean, the mental thing is separate, but he's, you know, support. So he's competed his whole life. He's a competitive guy. So he could probably tell you, you know, all the stuff he's done that will, that he had all this other training of, you know, already that maybe you don't think it's applicable. It's football, it's basketball, it's baseball, it's whatever. But competition goes a long way. You know?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, like I can't put a finger on it, attribute it where it comes from. I don't know if it's natural or if it's just, but you know, again, like, you know, the first time, like I said, I did karate when I was 5 years old. And I don't ever remember being scared, like to go compete. Like I've always been competitive. Even time I was a little kid, just competitive, like just determined to win. But I think over the years of like, you know, playing football, playing baseball, and being in front of these crowds, and like, so by the time I started fighting, like in you know, cage fighting in a cage, it was just like, normal to me, like everyday stuff, and like, you know, I'm not calm trying to be calm just for the sake of like being calm and trying to show the people that I'm calm. Like it was just kind of natural that I like really wasn't bothered by the, you know, by the atmosphere and things like that. And a lot of times it's like I'm in there fighting, like you hear a lot of people talk about like how the crowd bothers them, stuff like that. Like I don't even like when I'm in there competing, like it's almost like as if no one's there but my coaches and the guy I'm fighting. Like, you know, I don't know, it's weird. I can't really attribute it to anything, but the only thing I could say is probably just, you know, growing up and playing a 10 different sports, and you know, and being in situations, you know, you're playing baseball, you're down on the bottom of the ninth, you come up to the plate, you know, people are freaking out like, "Oh, weren't you scared?" I'm like, no, it's just the sport that I love to do. So I don't know. It's like I say it all the time, and Ian's heard me say it a lot of times. It's the great mystery when it comes to combat sports, man. Like, how do you get a guy that's super talented to believe in himself, not be scared, not be worried? But I don't know. It's just one of those things, man. It just comes from that person, I guess.
But see, and I'll say that my job that I'm not always, you know, I don't think anyone's is perfect at anything. Obviously, my job is to recognize all these attributes, especially mental attributes. And where I will say I've messed up many times, and I think probably, I mean, not great, not hugely with Terrion, but I definitely on some level with a lot of guys, is that different things, not recognizing, you know, it's just like if you're a director in a film, like, does this actor respond to being yelled at? Does this actor respond to being, you know, I'm usually pretty good at reading and going, okay, this guy needs to be told to shut up and fight. This guy needs to be told he's doing great. This guy, whatever. But where someone like Terrion and someone like James Acosta happen, where they're so calm, they're not scared in there. They're not nervous in there. They're calm and they're relaxed. Sometimes too calm and relaxed, where it's like, hey, I need you to pull the trigger. And I have to find a way to get them a little bit of nerves, a little bit of tension, so that they come out a little harder. And not just go, all right, cool, I'm in here sparring. Because we always tell all the other guys, just think you're sparring to get the nerves down. Guys who don't have problems, you don't want to get them down. You want to get them up. And then the other thing is, I feel is when, because, you know, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for Terrion here, but after the UFC, I feel that there was probably some self-doubt and some things that he had that I probably didn't recognize, because he's so calm, and I'm so used to him just being like, I got this, that any time, you know, a loss or whatever make him go, or people in his head saying, hey, you're doing that he probably had self-doubts in there at times that I should have recognized, but I'm like, nah, Terrion, he's got it. But he's so got that stone face that it's like, you never see him flustered. his opponents don't see him flustered. Nobody ever sees him flustered. So I was fooled by that. I'm sure at times where it's like, there were probably times where he was going, am I doing this right? Blah, blah, that I should have been like, hey man, you got this. You know, are you cool? You need anything? Because that's the hard thing, is to make sure that everybody, I don't care how good you are, you're Fedor, everybody has something that makes them at some point. I always talked about BJ Penn. I've always thought BJ Penn's problems came from the fact that he was too good. He smashed everybody. And then all of a sudden he got people that he couldn't smash, or he would smash them for 2 rounds, but they wouldn't go away. And I really feel like, I don't know this for a fact, my speculation is that he's been like, well, I just annihilated this guy for 5 minutes and he's still standing at me going, let's go. What else can I do? And instead of going, let's do that again, it's like, well, I guess that's over. I didn't finish him. Well, no, you don't have to finish him. Smash him for 3 rounds. But his mind was, I destroy everybody and they tap. This guy's not tapping. I guess I failed. And again, that's just me from what I watch, and I've seen other people do that. So it's like, sometimes if you're used to a certain thing and it doesn't always work exactly what you want, sometimes that puts that doubt. And if you've got a certain persona, it's hard to read that. I mean, that's just what I'm seeing, and I'm trying to learn more of that as I go. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's hard because I didn't even recognize it either. And like, you know, I think with any athlete, there's always going to be, no matter how calm they are, there's always going to be, you know, you're going to come to a point in the road where like, shit, like, you know, can I do this? Is this guy better than me? Is there going to be some self-doubt? And I think with me, it was always, I'm just so used to, like, no matter what sport I played, like, I was usually one of the smaller kids. I was one of the smaller, so I always had to work harder than everyone else. And eventually, through that hard work, I prevailed, and you know, you become captain and things like that. You get the starting job. You know, I was 5'8", 140 pounds, starting varsity quarterback. So for me, it was like when I did hit some of those losses, and it was like, man, I don't know if my skill level is there. In the back of my mind, I'm like, well, even if it's not there, I'm just gonna outwork this person. I'm gonna do something. You know, if my skill level isn't there, then I'm going to make my cardio as high as possible, to the point where, okay, as he gets tired, the skills will end up meeting, and then I'll, you know, overtake him and beat him in that way. So, you know, while there was self-doubt, you know, in terms of the skills, there was never self-doubt in terms of like my competitiveness and thinking that I always thought I was going to win no matter what fight that I went into. And I always fought like it, you know, even, you know, when I fought guys that, you know, that were, you know, you could see on screen, okay, those guys have a better skill level than me. Like, whether I won or lost, like, I competed with those guys, and I beat guys that I probably wasn't supposed to beat at the time, you know. And I think, you know, it's just one of those things. I think, like, you know, like Ian said, like, it's, you know, no one's ever going to be perfect when it comes to recognizing that it varies from person to person, different personalities and things like that. But yeah, it's just it's kind of a hard thing to kind of pinpoint in, you know, from person to person. I think that's just a part of the journey, you know, when it comes to each athlete, each coach, of trying to figure that out over time. You know, I think we got to that point, you know, just, you know, for me, like, I was looking at it, I didn't even realize it. Like, 3 of the 4 guys I fought in the UFC are right now ranked in the top 15. And then the one guy who's not is actually retired. And I actually beat him, and I actually beat him. But you know, so that lets me know, like, hey, you know, I'm right there. Maybe if I had, you know, fought, maybe, you know, and I would never ask for an easy opponent or anything like that, but maybe if I had fought like an easier opponent, it would have built a little bit more confidence, and things, you know, would a little bit different in my career. But you know, it is what it is.
And I think partly, I mean, and again, just reading right now, even saying when Terrion says, even if I have skill, I think he has the skill. And that's the kind of thing that I need to go, okay, how do I let this guy know he's got the skill? How do we do that? And there's been times in fights where I'm like, man, what could I have done to get him to do like more? Because I think his ground game and his takedowns are better than he thinks, and he didn't do them enough, in my opinion. And there were points where early in his career, he was throwing kicks and elbows, and later on, it was way too much on the hands. And I'm like, how do we get this? And I should have found ways to drill to make it come out so he doesn't. I don't think he doubted himself. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But when I'm going, I know you can get that takedown. And a funny example or a good example is, so Terrion, we haven't trained together in a while, but there's new guys in my gym who, see us pictures and see us and go, hey, I saw you was watching an old fight and you were in the corner and did that guy train here and whatever. And I've had people go, I saw this fight. He should have won that fight. I saw this fight. He should have won that fight. And it's like 3 out of 4 fights where people are like 50-50. And the Tom fight, everyone thinks he won that fight. But here's the thing I thought was kind of funny is I was talking to one of our fighters the other day, Arslan. We were just talking about just game planning and believing in yourself kind of stuff, And he said, we were talking about, because Tom Duquesnoy was like 24-2 or something like that when Terrion fought him. It was in England. He was a hero over there. And this guy's super athletic. He's considered one of the best strikers to be in the game. He had fought, he had fought Cody Stamann as well. And Cody took him down like once. And Cody's a great wrestler. And the UFC had been trying to get Tom Duquesnoy for years. And he turned them down when he was like 19 because he didn't feel he was ready. And it's like, he was somebody they were after. So we were in his home, all this sort of stuff. And Arslan told me the other day, he goes, I remember when you said, we're going to take Tom Duquesnoy down. I was thinking to myself, he goes, that guy has the best takedown defense I've ever seen outside of Jose Aldo. He goes, this guy's an idiot. This guy's crazy. He's like, there's no way Terrion's taking Tom Duquesnoy down. And I was like, no. Terrion's better than you think. His timing is good. And Tom Duquesnoy is not going to expect Terrion to take him down. He's going to take him down. And he was like, I didn't believe you. He goes, and I was like, does he not know how good Tom Duquesnoy is? He's like, does he not know how good his takedown is? And I said, and sure enough, Terrion took him down 3 times in that fight. And he goes, I watched the fight and I'm like, wow. He's right. I didn't know. Like he goes, it was like a revelation for him to go, oh, you can do things if they're. He goes, I would have thought that was impossible, and here it is happening. He goes, maybe I need to listen. It was like I forgot exactly what he said, but he was like, holy crap. And I'm like, yeah, because Terrion was trained for that fight and he was believed in himself in that fight and he went after him and I don't think anybody expected that to happen. I really don't. And it's like sometimes there's that. Sometimes it's just a matter of doing it and doing it over and over and getting comfortable with it and just believing in yourself full force. And that's so hard to do. It's so hard to do. And again, it's hard for me to recognize when somebody who normally does it, he normally believes in himself. So when he had any doubt, I didn't recognize it. I didn't recognize it until after the fact. And I was like, oh, you know what? He wasn't sure he could get that. That's why he didn't throw that. Shoot, I should have recognized that. I mean, it was only a handful of times, but those handful of times might have been those 50-50 matches. That might have been what put us over on the O'Malley fight, which a lot of people think Terrion won. On the Cody Stamann fight, maybe stopping 1 or 2 takedowns or getting up 10 seconds earlier because he outlanded him on the feet. With that, he went away. Both Terrion's first 2 fights, they went away on crutches.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
They both went away from leg kicks, and Terrion's not even known for being a leg kicker. Both guys went away from leg kicks, both losses, and they went away on crutches, and and bloodied up faces. He went away looking like this, and so it was the fights were very close, and it was just little things that should have been me recognizing that we could have done, tweaked a little bit, pushed it forward, and made him go, I know I can do this. I know I can, even more than he already does naturally.
But do you agree with that assessment, Terrion?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it was, I didn't recognize it as much because again, I'm so competitive and I never doubted, that I could win or I could find a way to win. But if there were some things where I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't try this because I'm not good at it. You know what I mean? Like, so let me find another way. So just not believing in certain things and just kind of being free. And I think I think for me, one of the things that I've recognized is sometimes being too smart, you know, and going and being too, you know, over analytical and analyzing, like, okay, well, this guy does this really well, this guy does this really well, so I'm going to stay away from, you know, trying to do this or try to do that. Whereas like if I just kind of went out there and just let my competitive nature, let my athleticism just kind of take over and just do whatever comes to mind, that I probably would have had a lot more success. And you know, I look back at some of the you know, I watch my fights all the time, and I'm looking at them like, you know, I'll do certain things. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even realize I did that, or or that I could do that. I'm like, why didn't I do more of this? Why, like, I can, you know, like, I can throw these spinning attacks. I can hit this takedown. I can hit this, but it was just like in the fight, you know, I there was sometimes thinking to myself like, maybe I shouldn't do that. It's a little too risky. So I think for me, it's like, you know, if you watch my fights and if you hear me, if I were to say like, oh, I played it safe, you would think to yourself, what the fuck are you talking about playing it safe? Like, because I throw 100 strikes per round, I'm going in. But I mean, in a sense of, you know, kind of sticking to like fundamental striking and doing things that I'm comfortable with and good at is what I mean by playing it safe. Whereas if I would have been a little bit more open and more free, you know, throwing certain things in there, you know, who knows, you know, the fights could have turned out different. And that's just something, you know, again, you know, yeah, maybe it's just getting started a little bit late. You know, I know I've been in this game 10 years, but you know, I still don't have a lot of experience, you know, the experience that some guys who they've been training since they were 5, 6, 7 years old, doing wrestling, jiu-jitsu and things like that, where I was playing traditional sports. I'm still, you know, learning in this game. I'm still learning a lot. You know, you ask anybody that's been training martial arts for 20, 30, 40 years, and you ask them, you know, did they, you know, after 10 years, do you think you knew anything? They'll tell you they didn't know shit, you know? So for me, it's like, yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years, but I'm still learning. I'm still learning, you know, a lot about this game, a lot about myself, and, you know, just being more, you know, confident in everything that I do. And, you know, so.
Yeah, I think, and I've told Terrion this too, so he's heard me say it multiple times. I think, go back to James Acosta, what Terrion just said about himself, I've said openly out loud. I said, I think on some level, my coaching style was bad for James Acosta. I think on some level, I ruined a couple of his fights. I mean, that guy was notorious for being like, it was 2-5 or something. And like those 5 losses were like split decisions against super tough guys. But I'm so analytical and I'm so used to people that are like, can't get their head straight, that I do all these things to get people to think about things and to relax. But you get a couple guys that are super relaxed, that aren't afraid to fight, that do stuff on instinct. You can get them overthinking. And I know for a fact there was a couple fights where I watched James and I'm just like, why isn't he fighting this guy? And I could see him thinking. And I'm like, I should have never got that guy thinking. I should have found a way to teach him what I want to teach him and the techniques and make him mix it up so he doesn't just do the same thing over and over, but not have him think all the time. And that was on me for, you know, I was trying to find a way to get him, because he used to always be a slow starter. Even when he was an amateur, he would start slow. And my way of trying to get him past that ended up making him think too much in there and sitting in there contemplating. And it's like, man, you could have just thrown 10 more punches. You would have won each one of those rounds, but you thought and waited. And sometimes that's a detriment to a fighter, you know? And then, you know, but the opposite, I'm used to guys that just go in there and you know, so many fighters in Terrion can test this. So many people go in there and they completely fold under pressure, or they're fight or flight. Like, people think flight mode means you run away. For fighters, a lot of times flight mode is to brawl. Flight mode just means you're not working. You're working on autopilot. So right. if your autopilot is to bite down and throw haymakers, you're still on flight mode. That's how you're going to get knocked out. You see these guys, we talk about all the time, Jerry, right? Where you see these guys and they look like magicians on the pads. And then they fight and they're just brawling. And you're like, why is that? And it's like, because that guy never transitioned from the pads to the anxiety of getting in the face. So his flight mode is to bite down his mouthpiece and punch Some people's flight mode is to shoot takedowns. Some people's flight mode is to roll over and into the fetal position and go away. But just because they're throwing punches and bombing doesn't mean they're not in flight mode. Flight mode just means you're not thinking and you're on automatic pilot and you're not doing what you're supposed to do. The trick is to make flight mode and fight mode the same, to make it to where you naturally, instinctively do the right stuff. So usually my path to get there is through thinking about it. But eventually I want you to stop thinking about it too.
Yeah.
Fight. And some people, they just get into thinking about it. And it's and they're not in flight mode. They're just trying to do with what we've been working on. But I want them to throw that away. I want them to get out of this, work on this, so they can get back to a combination of the two. And that's really hard. That's hard for anybody.
Yeah, and it's hard too to try to, like, you know, even as a coach, like there's times like, you know, like when I've cornered, like, because like when I'm in a fight and I'm fighting I'm like, I'm calm, I'm whatever, because I can control the situation. But when you're watching a teammate or you're watching somebody that you care about, you want them to do well so bad. So you want to try to give them as much information as possible to help them. Like, you want to make sure they don't miss anything, because you don't want them to get caught in anything. Like, you don't, because you know, again, you care about them. You know how much work they've put into it. There's a lot on the line. And so you want to say everything possible. You want to try to get it out. But, you know, to Ian's point, like sometimes, like, you know, you might have where you can do that with me, like, and it's not going to like put me into the mode where I'm going to start brawling or I'm going to shoot for a stupid takedown. Like, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to do all those things and be calm, where, again, like he was saying, where some of the, you know, the fight or flight mode, you know, someone might freak out and panic and start brawling or shoot for a takedown. And it's like, you know, when you see guys brawl, like, first of all, it's like, when have you ever seen a coach have someone brawl on the pads? You know, so like, why are you doing that? So like, obviously that should be, you know, like, that's an easy, you know, it should be an easy thing for you to recognize, like, okay, this person is doing something that they've never done before, or they shouldn't be doing, because like, we don't even train to do that. Or someone shoots for a takedown 40 feet away because they're panicking. It's like, when have I ever taught you that? So, right. But again, like I said, it's hard, you know, when you're in there cornering somebody, because you want to try to get them as much information as possible. And sometimes the best thing to kind of do is, you know, maybe say one or two things, or, right, you know, try to get them to calm down and just like, hey, focus on this, or I want you to do that.
And sometimes that's the coach or the teammate's anxiety. Like, I won't mention names because I don't, but we know people, they come and they corner, and I've had to kick people out of corners because they're in there going, okay, then do this, and then if this happens, then do this, then go to this, and then go to this, and then if this works, this, and if he does this, you want to do this. And they're trying to teach 30 new techniques in the corner, and the fighter's going, well, I don't know any of this stuff. What's going on? And it's like, you don't, because they're trying to go, oh shoot, what happens if the guy does this? I should teach him this. What happens if and same thing, the corner comes and they're going, you know, blah, 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 like nonstop. And it's like, shut up. First off, let the guy fight. It's not a video game. You can't control him. And second of all, you're raising this. If that guy, again, Terrion said he's not one of those guys, but if you're somebody who's nervous, that's just going to raise your anxiety levels to hear all this stuff coming and you don't know what to do. Whereas there's only been like Terrion, I would say Julian, who's my partner, who's one of my first fighters. There's only been a handful of guys, but you can watch, especially like the old BAMMA fights, where you can kind of hear more, and you got like Ron Iacovetti and these guys giving the play-by-play and whatever, and you can hear us in the corner. You can watch Terrion, like we have a pretty good corner. Like, you know, usually I talk. If somebody else wants to talk, they put their hand on my shoulder, then they talk, or they tell me what they want me to say. But you can hear, like, with simple stuff. And when I'm saying something to him, it's not, do it right now. It's, I see an opening. And I'll go, and there's been multiple times you can watch fights where I'll go, that when we have some code words and whatever, I'll go, that such and such is open. And you see him nod. He goes, it doesn't mean do it right now. It means, you see it? Do you see it? And he goes, yeah, I see it. And it might be 1 second later, it might be a minute later, but pop, 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 right? Oh, look how he's reacting. Now you know what to do, right? Okay, because we know that the second part of that drill is this, or the
Right.
third drill is this. And I just have to suggest it. And if he doesn't do it right away, but he nods and lets me know he sees it and he's looking for it, then I know it's under control. When I'm over and over and he's not responding, then I think, is he not hearing me? Does he not believe in what I'm telling him from the corner? And I almost never, I don't think I ever had that problem with there's like a small handful of guys. But the trick is, like Terrion's saying, is when you do have that guy who doesn't hear or doesn't believe in it, I'm going, the body's open. And they a round and a half will go by and there's no body shot. You're like, the body's open. You start going, the body's open, the body. You start yelling and screaming, and that doesn't really help. That doesn't help either. But it's like something everyone does because they're like, why is this guy?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, what are you supposed to do at that point? Like,
Right.
I've said it calm, like he's not responding. Now just gotta just yell it and beat it into your brain, and then yeah. But like, and then that it comes from, and then, like I said, sometimes it might take a while to recognize, and that's what having amateur fights and stuff like that is for, but it's up to the athlete as well too. The athlete has to communicate and be like, hey, like, this is bothering me, or I can't seem to get this right, or whatever the case may be, or I'm not confident in this. So that way, both fighter and coach can sit down and come up with a way, like, hey, like when I say something, try to get the for them to be able to respond. Yeah, it's to this day, it's still a mystery. There's no really, there's no blueprint where you can say, hey, you got to do this, and this is going to work for fighter A through Z. It's just one of those things where you have to build a long-term relationship and trust with. And you see a lot of guys, where they jump from camp to camp to camp, and the guy is good, but they never quite put it together. They never quite do anything. And the reason being is because you've never spent time, building and developing a relationship to where you can trust your coach and the coach can trust the fighter, to know what they need and when to back off and when not to. And, I think just, longevity, that's the only way you're going to really be able to kind of, get to that point.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because remember our running joke used to always be like, we would joke about, I mean, not to be dicks, but just kind of funny. Someone would lose a big fight and one of us would usually text the other one or go, so is he changing camps or weight class? Right?
Yeah.
And then like a week later, it'd be like, so-and-so moved to 125 and be like, told you, or so-and-so told you. It happens all the time. And that comes down to, again, usually it's self-doubt. And a lot of times, and not to say that there aren't bad combinations of fighter and coach, not to say there aren't shitty gyms, not to say any of that sort of stuff, but a lot of times that comes down to, again, the insecurity of or whatever of that fighter going, I need to find something to throw this blame on. I need to find something to make myself feel better instead of looking internal. That's the hardest thing we can do. And it's not just about fighting, it's about life. Looking at yourself and going, what did I do wrong? How do I fix this? And the answer might be, I'm not saying the answer isn't ever, man, oh, well, your jiu-jitsu coach is a white belt, has never done jiu-jitsu. Oh, well, there's the problem. Okay, that might be the problem. But if you've examined all those things and you've empirically figured out these are not the problems, then you have to, it's okay to look and go, what's the problem? But most people don't do that. Most people just look for a solution that doesn't make them have to look at their problems. And again, that's in life. That's in relationships with your spouse. That's in work. That's in everything. It's like, well, what can I do to, where else can the problem lie so that I don't have to actually look at myself? And if you look at yourself and you go, no, I'm good, it's them. That happens. There's lots of times when you go, it ain't me, it's you. It happens a lot. So
no, 100%. And it's just, I mean, sometimes what is it? A spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, right? And that's kind of it. And sometimes you need a whole factory worth of fucking sugar to make it a little bit more palatable, at least to your psyche, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely want to get into, because obviously, you're a coach, but a lot of people here on the SoCal scene kind of know, how you've kind of, started your whole process and what have you. But for those who don't know, I definitely want to get into that. Jesse Flores, by the way, says, "Hey, Ian," and Jeffrey Johnson out of Oklahoma says, "Terrion, my man." Yeah. So, dude, literally the comment section is going wild over here. So, but yeah, Ian, how did you start in this kind of crazy world of combat sports?
Well, I've been doing something since I started boxing when I was 6. I boxed till I was 10, just like police athletic league in my tiny little town, Santa Cruz, California. And then I wrestled a couple years, nothing great, but junior high school, 2.5 years. And then until I broke my arm, where's my camera, for the first and second time. You can see the scars now. Anyway, and then I started doing traditional martial arts. I did Kempo and Wing Chun till I was about 21. And then when I moved to LA when I was 21, and I trained Jeet Kune Do and Muay Thai with Richard Bustillo at the IMB Academy. And a lot of Muay Thai down there. It was basically 4 years of Muay Thai more so. And we also did Shuto, like grappling with Yuri Nakamura and things like that. And then in 96, I moved back to Santa Cruz and started jiu-jitsu with Claudio Franza in 96. And then I moved back down 5 years later. And then I was about a year or two where I was kind of going off and on to Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu to get some training, but I was working at, I'm a comedian, so I had signed with a manager, and they told me to stay home and not be on the road. And so I took a day job working in a editing facility, and I got fat and tried to get back to jiu-jitsu, and I wasn't going. So I started 2003. I found a place that let me rent out their space, and I started teaching 2 days a week. And then within like 3 months, it became 4 days a week. And I was teaching a combination of jiu-jitsu, and there was no name for MMA at the time. At the time, I think there was still 3 weight classes. It was like heavyweight, under 199, and then under 169. And it was still headbutts, and I needed to find a way to keep in shape. So I'm like, if I teach a class, then I have to be there. So I was teaching striking. There was, Muay Thai, boxing, Wing Chun, JKD, mixed with my jiu-jitsu, which I'd done for about 5 years, and Shuto, and was putting it together. And I started calling it Fight Science because there was no such word mixed martial arts at the time. And so I'm like, what do I call this hybrid thing that isn't karate, it isn't boxing, it isn't Muay Thai? And like about a year later, I had 3 guys that wanted to fight: Julian Rush, Chad George, and a guy named George James, who doesn't fight anymore. And we would go down to Mexico around 2004. It was illegal still here in California. And we would fight in Mexico for Eric Del Fiero's show, Total Combat. And then it became legal here. And Total Combat and TFA were the first legal pro shows in America. And we had 2 of the first champions. We had Chad George and Julian Rush, who's now my partner at Fight Science. Yeah, and then it went on from there. Then we moved around. Then we had PKG. Then we had Systems. Now I've got my own gym, Fight Science, that I've had for the last 3 years. And for the most part, the guys have followed me. People come and go. Chad's got his own gym now. A couple guys stayed at PKG. A couple guys stayed at Systems when we left. But for the most part, it's a lot of the same people, And some people are old now, and they're like, I'm 40, I'm not fighting anymore. And like, okay, bye, But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Just been kind of involved since 2003, really.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Because I mean, growing up in Inglewood, 2003, the only thing, any kind of combat sports that I knew was just like that Gracie Baja up the 405 and kind of like Manhattan Beach, and that was it. And now you go down that run, there's Systems, there's a multitude of different gyms. But again, within the last 20 years, how much everything has kind of expanded, and it's crazy to see that we're still a young sport, and things are developing literally at the pace of like light, essentially. But it's just kind of crazy, those like humble beginnings of both of you guys. And I think it's absolutely amazing because you guys kind of got into them because like, hey, I'm kind of fat. So let me just do something, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, years on the road doing comedy will get you fat. So sitting in a car, drinking beer, drinking crappy food, you know.
Yeah, for me it was the married life and clubbing.
Right?
There you go. There you go. Now, I definitely want to get into the run because, I mean, to me, I just, you know, and we talked about the Terrion, and now, Ian, you're here. But, I mean, that run, you know, into the UFC, that, I mean, it was almost, you could get like 8 of the best Hollywood directors and what screenwriters and whatever, and you couldn't do like a more perfect story than what you guys went through. But I want to get into it because, I mean, obviously, you know, before your UFC run, I mean, we're talking about, you know, fights with Rob Gooch, you know, the obviously Joe Murphy, who you look at Joe Murphy's talent as a coach, you know, his wife Lauren is like, you know, former Invicta champion and top 5 flyweight in the world in the UFC. You've got Luke Sanders, you know. So, I mean, how was that wave? Because, I mean, I remember, you know, having you guys on, I mean, having you on, Terry, on Two Guys One Phone with Marcus Bonilla so early in my career. Literally the first thing that I ever did. And, you know, we were trying to get you onto, I think, a card in Vegas or whatever that was like maybe about a month or so away. And then you ended up getting Anaheim on the Cyborg card. Like, obviously, I mean, for us, you know, watching, I mean, literally the path of UFC was paved in gold. You know, IFS titles, BAMMA titles, that trilogy, crescendo with Jared Papazian at CXF, right? But did you guys know how special that run was going out to it? Because, like, for me, I'll speak for myself. I mean, that was just like, you couldn't have written a better storyline. You couldn't at all. But did you guys know the specialness of what was going on around you?
You want to feel that?
I mean, we kind of had an idea. I mean, you know, we were confident in terms of our preparation, in terms of what we had as fighter and coach, and you know, going around and we, you know, train with, you know, other people and stuff like that. But I think for me, and I'm pretty sure he feels this way as well too. Like, we were just doing what we loved. You know, I don't think we thought of it as anything more special than anybody else. We knew what the goal was from day one, and that was to get to the UFC, have a long career in the UFC, you know, and that's what we were focusing on. We were just trying to take that fight by fight, and just trying to, you know, just build up our resume and build our skills. You know, for a while we were like, why in the fuck, why is this guy getting signed over me, and why is this guy getting signed, you know? And ultimately it just got to the point where we were just like, you know what, let's just go after everybody, you know, take everybody out, and then they can't deny you. So that at that point, you know, there was a run where that's kind of the page that we were on, where we were just trying to take out, you know, fight the best guys, and show that, you know, that we belong there. So
Yeah, I mean, and you, like I was saying earlier, I mean, California, it's, they said California amateurs will beat most pros in other parts of the country and the world. And it's like, so when you look at, like, you know, and then when you go to the regional shows like RFA, which is now LFA, and it's like, that's the feeder show to the UFC. Like, so it's like, those are the best guys from California and everywhere else fighting. So, you know, when we're fighting guys like, you know, think about it. So you start back, I guess Terrion was 5-2, 5-1 when he fought Jared Papazian. Jared had just come off he was on the UFC. He lost. He won one, lost two, I think, got cut. Fought pretty tough guys. And, you know, he came in, we fought for BAMMA, and he missed weight. He by 8 pounds. It wasn't a super exciting fight. He did a lot of you know, he did what he needed to win, and that's great on Jared. But also, Terrion was still pretty young in his career. I mean, like he said, those amateur fights, those 12, 13 amateur fights, those were all in a year and a half. Then two pro fights that were, you know, when I came in, like I said, he was 1-1, and then we were, from that point, we had gone 4-0, So he was 5-1, but he's still been fighting a short period of time. So now he's fighting a UFC vet, and still it was a good fight. But the thing is, unfortunately, that loss, Sean Shelby had said a few times on the way up, yeah, he lost to Jared Papazian. We're like, yeah, 8 fights ago, like, and he's won since then. So it was like, okay, well, who else you want? And then it's like, we fought, and he had every title in California, basically, dude had. Like, you know, BAMMA was the bigger show. He beat Eric Winston, who was undefeated. He fought Jeff Martin, whose record doesn't show, but Jeff Martin is a tough son of a bitch. Like, Terrion broke his jaw in the first round. The guy went 3 more rounds. Like, the dude's tough, and he's good. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He knows what he's doing. So, and then, you know, you said we fought Rob Gooch, and then and going out and fighting Joe Soto, who you know, that fight, Joe Soto was given mad respect since, personally telling me how good Terrion is. He didn't want to go in the 3rd round. He was like, I just got my gas kicked from the 2nd round. And he went out there and he got Terrion down, and Joe Soto's wicked on the ground, caught him in a choke. And I think Terrion might have even been a blue belt at the time, you know, and it was 3rd round. It's like, okay, we're fighting really tough guys. And at the time, Joe Soto had already fought Bellator and all that. I mean, he was, you know, a dude. I mean, he was a known guy. And then you know, we get the opportunity to fight Luke Sanders, and it's like it was the LFA or Legacy versus RFA, right? So it was like Pantoja was on there. What's his name? The devil, the angel, what the hell?
Damasio Page.
Damasio Page, right? It was big.
Damasio Page, yeah.
And we, you know, the idea was, well, they said whoever wins between Terrion and Luke is going to the UFC, and that was a freaking close fight again. And you know, and Terrion overcame a ridiculous liver kick that would have put everybody else out. And the ref said, I'm stopping the fight. And he was about to step in and stop it. And Terrion just stood the hell up and was like, nope, you're not stopping this fight. And walked around and punched him, limping with a liver shot for the rest of the round, trying to recover. It took him into the 2nd round to recover from that kick. That dude kicks hard. And won the 3rd round, probably won the 4th or 5th round. It was a close fight. He lost. Luke goes to the UFC, and Luke is still in the UFC. And it's like, then they give us Leandro Higo, who was like 14-1 at the time. That was a razor thin fight. That you know, Terrion made some mistakes in the 3rd round because it was too close to call. In hindsight, maybe if the 3rd round, if we could have won a decision, but it was like he went for it in the 3rd round. He wasn't leaving it to the judges. He went for it and got taken down, and you know, got in trouble in the 3rd round. But that fight was close. And it's like, these are the top dudes in the world. And then, of course, but because of losses, we got to win a few more, and got a few more wins against really tough Rob Gooch, all these really tough guys. And then it came down to that Papazian, and we're like, you know what? This is the one that plagued us. And I'm not the same fighter, right? I mean, Terrion's like, I'm night and day from that dude that fought this guy. And it was like, we're gonna prove this. And people also forget, Jared Papazian trained with me for a long time. I cornered Jared Papazian against you know, Jimmy Rivera, and against you know, a guy his title fights in the King of Cage. So I know Jared very well, and I'm like, this isn't the same fight. This fight is not going to go the way that Jared thinks it's going to go. And sure enough, it didn't. And that was one of Terrion's best performances. I mean, triangle chokes, takedowns, elbows, knees, punches, like it, and then basically a walk-off knockout, right? And that was just like, how do you deny after that? There's just no way to deny after that. But so when you look back at it as a whole, you go, damn, this dude fought some crazy people. And it was like, you kept thinking he's going to get in. Nope. He's going to get in. Okay, now just fight this Godzilla. Oh, shoot, we lose a split decision to Godzilla. Now we got to fight 3 more fights. And who's taking a fight at that point? Only tough guys. It was crazy. So everybody there were good. And then I see this too. Look at his run in the UFC, you know, and I'm not saying this because he's my dude. I'm saying this because if you look at his run in the UFC, that's arguably one of the toughest first 4 fights, especially in hindsight. Cody Stamann, Sugar Sean O'Malley, Tom Duke, and then going to Russia to fight Dvalishvili, who at the time people were like, well, he's lost 2 in a row. Neither one of those 2 were losses. That dude's a monster, and look at what he's done since. So it's like, you look at those first 4 fights in the UFC. He didn't get any kind of. I mean, it was like, you know, they kept throwing him. You're thinking like, what are they doing here? You know, but it's like none of those fights were walkaway fights. I mean, the Merab fight was probably the one that was the one, but the other 3 were like super close, razor thin. They could have gone. I mean, like we said, I for sure think he won the Duquesnoy fight. The other fights were razor thin fights. So, dude's had a crazy run, and it's again because look at the people that we have to fight here in California. Look at once you fight those people, who's going to fight Terrion? I mean, right now, you know who's going to fight guys like that? Not me. You know what
not me, certainly not me. And I mean, isn't that something that kind of gives you pride? I mean, obviously it's not over, and this is far from a career retrospective, but I mean, in hindsight 2020, isn't that something that you guys, you take as a sense of pride that you fought the tippy top of like everyone, and we're there, just like, like a micro inch of a difference, and it could have gone the other way.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's, I think that's the sad thing is this. The sad thing about this is that coulda, woulda, shoulda. And, Terrion said to me once, not too long ago, after the UFC stuff, he was like, yeah, we know that we at least won one of those, if maybe 2. He goes, but what ultimately, unfortunately, whether it's a shitty judging, whether it's an injury, whatever it is, it's a loss. And unfortunately, people look at that and they judge that. And that sucks because that's unfortunately not fair. It's not fair. I even feel like I didn't want the Merab fight for several reasons. I was going to be gone for a couple of weeks and there's nothing I could do about it right before. It was all the way in Russia, which is, it was the first show in Russia. It was a bad style matchup. There was some other things going on personally with everybody involved, really. And I didn't want that fight. I wasn't afraid of Merab. I think Terrion could beat Merab, but I just thought that was at the time was not a good fight. And especially the pressure of you have to win this fight. But because he had lost 3, it was like, you have to take the fight we want you to take. And you got to win. And it's kind of like, and Merab even said, he goes, I'm just going to take him down and hold him. He goes, because I got to win. I'm not getting cut. Because Merab was on the cutting board too. And they're like, and I'm like, so to me, that kind of sucked that he was put in that position. That it was like, well, I mean, on one hand, you could say it was cool that they gave him another fight because a lot of times they would have been cut. But they gave him another fight because he freaking deserved another fight. He earned another fight. He beat guys, or had super close fights to all the guys they were pushing. They were pushing the heck out of Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley's doing all the press conferences and all this sort of stuff. Co-main event, they're not doing it to him. They're obviously pushing and favoring one guy, right? So I feel like that last fight was, to me, was kind of a, I just don't think it was a fair. I think maybe on paper they're like, oh, well, you have to take it and we're giving you an opportunity. And that's cool. I appreciate that. But at the same time, it's like, that was, I don't know. I would have liked to see once, hey, let's give you a full training camp. Let's give you a good matchup that's going to be exciting, fun for everybody. And let's show people why you have had razor thin decisions with 4 of the best dudes at the weight class in what's now everyone calls the hardest division in the UFC. 135 and 155 are hands down the hardest division in the UFC. And who's in the top 15? Every dude he's fought.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like putting this pressure on a dude and saying, yeah, you got to go to Russia and fight this guy who's a freak wrestler who's super strong and great cardio and is just going to want to hold you down so he can win. And you have to win or you're gone. after 3 performances like he put on, that never sat right with me. It just never sat right with me. But you can't bitch about it. You can't, and Terrion would never bitch about it. But you can't be like, "Oh, poor me," because they're like, "Dude, you fought. You're given an opportunity. You fight in the UFC. Win. Blah blah blah." But you look at the totality of things, and it's like, it could have been different in a heartbeat. If you look at some of the other people fought, he could be 4-0, 5-0. He could still. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, and I think everyone who watches us fights knows that. That's the only thing that sucks for me is I'm like, everyone knows it, but what do you do about it?
Yeah, Terrion, you feel the same? I know you're kind of a demure guy and don't let too much on, but I mean, you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm never one to complain. Whenever those fights, were brought to me, like, I was confident that I can win. But again, you look back at it and it's. I guess it was just kind of the luck of the draw, or the bad luck of the draw, rather.
Right.
But as you get older and you get more experience as time goes by, like it's just a part of life. I can sit back and 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 cry about it and live the rest of my life with regrets and things like that, and not be happy, or I can take it for what it is, and just try to make the best of it, and going forward. Like I said, I'm still learning a lot in the sport, and things like that, and you know yeah, sometimes those things happen, and all I can do is look back at it, and I got a chance to do things and experience things that 8.9% of the population won't ever be put in a position to go do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a chance to fly across the world and fight in Russia. I mean, I grew up watching Rocky 4. So I would have never. Who knows? Yeah, I don't know if I ever would have been to Russia or London, or whatever the case may be. So I have to take the good with the bad, and just keep going from there. But I have no regrets in terms of any of that. And for me, it's like it gets to the point where, like, the people who know, um, know what I've done, and know how good I am, and things that I like. That's important to me. There's gonna be a lot of those casual people out there that can talk shit on YouTube and Twitter and whatever, and say whatever they want to say, but you're doing that eating Cheetos from your couch. Like, why do I care what you? Well, why should I care what they think? For me, at the end of the day, like, and I've told Ian this, and I've told my other coaches this, or anybody that's ever helped me. As long as they're proud of me, and in terms of the things that I've done, and the dedication and stuff that I've put in, as long as they're happy with the effort that I put in, that's all I care about. You know, um, you know, get in there. The only thing that I can ever say that I've ever been nervous about was me not um, putting on the performances and making people proud of me who have put in the time and the effort for me. If at the end of the day, if I walk away from a fight, win, lose, or draw, if they're proud of the effort that I put in, then that's the most important thing to me. So.
Well, and I think I know for me as a comedian, sometimes, it doesn't get you paid, but the respect of your peers is huge, and I can attest to the fact that everybody that Terrion's fought, and I've been in many corners, so I know this isn't true with everybody. That with other fighters, it's there's always mad respect. People always give each other respect, for sure. But there's a difference between giving somebody respect and going, "Hey, thanks for a fight. That was great." And when you see on somebody's face, or when they tell you something and you're like, "This guy means it." And I'll tell you, every single one of the guys that Terrion's fought, and especially the in the UFC, they've all come back to. I remember, Cody Stamann came back the first fight and was like, hanging out afterward, talking about, wow, that was a crazy fight. I didn't expect this. And the Sean O'Malley fight, remember he came into the room. I remember this, Terry. He came into the room. We're eating in the back there, and he came in on crutches, and he was like, "Whoa!" He goes, "I didn't expect that." He goes, "Where's our $60,000 fight of the night bonus?" He goes, "We need that bonus." And and they didn't give it to him, of course, but he was like, I can't believe he literally believed that he was going to walk through Terrion and knock him out. And he was like, I bleed from the nose. And he's like, I had no idea that's the fight I was in for. And it was honest and obvious. You could see, you go, yeah, and you know, shit, you didn't know what you were in for. And that's, to me, that's cool. You know, Thomas came in and his coaches came in and talked to us. I mean, shoot, Tom came to LA about a year or two ago, and he came into the gym and we talked. And yeah, I mean, and again, like genuine respect for as a human, but also as skills, you know, and fight. And it's like that, you know, Joe Soto told me when we were fighting on that same card together. He was on that card with the O'Malley card, and we were working out in the room together, and we were sitting on a thing, and he was like, he goes, I don't know if I've ever been with anybody that's as calm or has as good as good as striking as Terrion. He's like, he goes, it's weird. He goes, you look across and he's blank face, still hitting you with everything he throws. And he was like, he goes, I mean, we had a conversation like about it, sitting on the mat, warm up. He's like, dude's so calm. He goes, it's hard when the guy's that calm and just nothing phases him. He's like, and he goes, and his striking was not like anything I've ever faced before. And that was genuine. That wasn't just talk, you know? And so I think there's obviously something to that. That's got to make you feel good as a fighter. Definitely as a coach, you're like, man, when these guys that everyone else reveres are saying, no, this dude is super legit. You know, win, lose, or draw, for me, that means something. You know, and that happened quite a bit, you know, quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Respect goes a long way. You know, at the end of the day, when you're retiring, you're done. You can, have, you have all that money in the bank account, things like that, which is great and things like that. But, at the end of the day, respect when you're able to walk into a room and people respect you and stuff like that, that goes a long way. And that means a lot. That means something to me as well, too.
No, 100%, dude. And again, just to have you guys on, it's just, I mean, I respect you guys both individually and collectively, and it's just been a great run. But obviously, it's a weird time in the world, the literature, atmosphere. But any parting words that you would like to implore anyone who's going through tough times, or just like, just to kind of keep your head up?
Yeah, I mean, there's countless, stories and people that you can pull from that have gone through trials and tribulations and that have come back. But the one constant of the people that have come from that and that have succeeded is just never giving up, never stopping. I think a lot of times, it's hard to see, over the other side of the fence when you're in it. It's hard to, when you're going through all those things and you think that this is the way that's always going to be, and people just kind of accept that as is, where if you just put in the work, you put in the time, and you just keep going, you never stop, you eventually are going to be able, even if you don't get exactly to the point where you want to be, that you envision, that you dream, it'll still be a lot better than where you are at right now. So I would say that, to anybody that's going through anything, tough times don't last, tough people do. So just keep going, man. Whatever it is that you got to do, don't be afraid to ask for help either. That's a problem that I see with a lot of people. People are afraid or embarrassed to ask for help. I've been one of those people, where, for me, for a long time, I've kind of been on my own, and so I was always used to doing things on my own. But, sometimes you need a little bit of help, and don't be afraid to ask for help. But at the same time is, if someone does help you, stick their neck out for you, be a good person. Don't even if that person tells you, you don't have to pay me back. If you get to a point where you can pay them back, man, pay them back. Um, you know, be loyal. And ultimately just be a good person. Karma is a real thing, and the reason why karma is a real thing is when you put out positive energy, you do nice things, that it goes around. You might do something nice for somebody, or something selfless for somebody, and then that person in turns meets somebody that can help you, and they go, oh yeah, I know that guy, he's a great guy, and all of a sudden a bunch of opportunities open up for you, just because you did something, selfless. So be a good person, work hard. It'll take you far.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And Ian.
Well, I mean, everything you said for sure, but and I would also, say the biggest thing for me is you have to be self-aware. You have to be self-reflective. Yeah, because all that stuff is true that Terrion says, but we also know people who will say those things, but they don't know how to apply those things. Because like I said earlier, it's hard, man. It's hard to be self-reflective. It's hard to admit faults. It's hard to admit to other people, to yourself. I mean, we see it every day when you get into like a political argument. It's like you can post 10,000 articles and people will still stick to something that with no proof. And you're like, it's not that hard. Just say you were wrong. It's okay. We're not going to make fun of you. We're not going to you're wrong. It's okay. I'm wrong all the time. I'm wrong. And I'll go, yeah, I was wrong, but now I'm right again, because now you've helped me get better. That's cool. You have to be able to self-reflect and be self-aware. And then all that other stuff is going to be able to happen for you. All, like I said, hard work is great. And all that stuff is great. And again, part of that is, like Terrion says, being good to other people and being, knowing who's there, knowing, whether they are or not. I mean, the other thing is you can also be good to people. Not that the saying he wasn't saying this, but you can also just be good to people in general. And whether you know them or don't know them or whatever, if it comes back, it comes back. If it doesn't come back, it doesn't come back. But at least it's on your conscience. You're good. And it might come back, it might not. But when you're that way, it makes you feel better. It makes you work better. And other people see it, even if that person doesn't do it. Other people see it and go, "Oh, this guy does this for these other people, and look at that. That's cool." All that stuff helps, and it all is going to be beneficial for you, for your life in general, not just what you want to do. And if you want to get somewhere and you put in the hard work and you're that person, people are going to want to help you. Period. People are going to help you. If you're depressed, they're going to want to help you with your depression. If you're poor, they're going to want to help you with money. If whatever you need a ride, they're going to want to help you get a ride. Whatever it is, people will want to do that when they know you're honest, when they know you can self-reflect, and when they know you're a good person who's going to be there for them when they need it. And I think that's the key to life in general. And I mean, and to be quite honest, everything else, as far as making it and whatever it is you want to do, let's not forget that most of this shit is I mean, as a comedian, some of the funniest, most hardworking, badass people I know still work cruise ships. And some of the most untalented shitheads I know have 9 Netflix specials. Happens. It happened. Yeah. They got the opportunity. But the trick is, when that opportunity comes knocking, you have to be prepared, and you have to be ready to try to get that opportunity to come knocking. You have to get get it to knock, and when it knocks, you have to be ready. You have to be ready, and you have to be there, and you have to make sure that you treat it right, so that it comes knocking again if you screwed up the first time.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that definitely. It takes a lifetime to be an overnight success, and most people don't see the trials and tribulations, that happen before you get to the quote unquote promised land. So absolutely, dude, I thank you guys for being so open and honest and your candor. This is probably you two, I like Voodoo Maximus and Jesse Flores in here. You guys are two of my favorite people, not just in fight sports, but just in general. And to have you guys on at the same time, it's been awesome. So I totally appreciate that, and thank you guys for your support. Now, for those who haven't followed what you guys are doing, where can they find you on social media?
Go for it.
On Facebook, just Terrion Ware, and then on Instagram and Twitter, it's Flash MMA.
And my stuff is any social media is at Comediocre, comedy and mediocre. I think I have a 1 at the end of it, Comediocre 1 on Instagram, but I'm pretty easy to find. You can Google me, Ian Harris, and then if you want to watch any of my comedy, it's on Amazon Prime. I got 2 specials on there, Critical and Thinking and Extraordinary. And if you want to come train when stuff opens up again, it's Fight Science MMA in Mid City, and actually, if you drive by it, you actually see there's a giant mural that's basically Terrion on the side of the wall. I made the guy change it a little bit so Terrion wouldn't feel awkward seeing his head up there all the time. But it's Terrion on the side of the wall, but you see it when you drive by. So yeah, pop in one of these days. Yeah, pre-hair too.
Pre-hair, yeah, that's what I wanted.
Yes.
That's sick. And that has to be weird to kind of walk into yourself to train. I don't know. But guys, so thank you so much. Obviously, this is According to Woods. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys for joining us here. But we are out.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.